Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogbo333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order as Brazil. Last time we were here together, we had our dear Presidente, Adhemar de Barros, awaken from his coma, and then the impeachment process right there. A little too quickly, because it kind of messed up a lot of our focus tree. A lot of his stuff got rushed through, just because we were so fucking good. We didn't have the big foreign policy decision, for example, which is going to force us automatically out of the pact. We also, so be it there. I wanted do more of a balance thing anyway. We also lost the choice between here and here. So with that in mind, I lowered the autosave a little bit to give us one last little decision, just to actually help accentuate that. So, or get us past that point, rather. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. This neighborhood felt different, Natal thought as he walked hurriedly across Sao Paulo Street. It was always this run down, this neglected. Surely the PSP could do a better job once this whole impeachment crisis simmered down a little. He made a mental note as he continued to walk at a brisk pace before spotting the residents of the very party he helped ban just years ago. He approached the door and knocked thrice. As Natal turned around to check if it was being followed, the door swung open, and he was grabbed and shoved by into a dimly lit room. "Look who it is, boys! It's the lapdog and the man who betrayed us in Brazil just a while ago." Natal could barely make out several of the figures at the table, but there was one man he instantly recognized. "Those were regrettable times, gentlemen. I was just... Yeah. We get it. Just doing your job, right? Man's gotta work." The rest laughed, but Luis Carlos Prestes didn't. He was at the head of the table, hands clasped, deep in thought. "Natal, what brings you here tonight?" "Prestes, Adhemar and I need your help right now. I'm sure you've heard the impeachment news." "I'm not helping Adhemar, Natal. But I'll help you. I'll talk to some old friends in the PTB on one condition." "Of course, senor. How much?" Prestes' face tightened up as he held his right hand up. "I don't want your money, Natal. I want something more. You must re-legalize the party. I'm not compromising on that." Natal's heart sank. This was the steepest price so far, and was it one he could afford? He grimaced, putting a hand on his hip before telling Prestes, "Once this impeachment business is over, I'll see to your party's restoration." That makes things a little interesting. Let's go against all odds. Adhemar lives. Many have tried to take Adhemar down, and the establishment, the heartless conservatives, and the farce archivists have all taken their turns trying to ruin him, and each time they've been left wanting. Even when death itself took a swing at Adhemar, he found it too hard to take down our great leader. Yet this was not just Adhemar's victory. We must pay tribute to the loyal countrymen who fought to keep the power of the people, who fought to keep the government of the people in power. Now for our opponents dealt with, we must now move to deal with restoring confidence in the government. The crisis of the past year has left the future of the PSP as uncertain. It is up to us to prove that we are truly the only party that delivers. Let me check and see. Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. We just have to do one of these. Woo, we got an achievement. Look at that. Very, very fun. Walter Albuquerque. Huh? With highest respect for both the army and the nation, we congratulate General Perry Bevilacqua for his service. General Bevilacqua, if you would please rise, sir. He hoped he could wipe the sneer from his face. Fortunately, it was not visible as he rose from his seat to approach the podium and shake the chief of staff's hand. His grip was firm. He knew no other way. With steady confidence in his position, a steady certainty in his beliefs that had served him well for his career, the chief of staff took his hand and gripped it tight as well. Then he took his seat at the other side of a chief, where a less appreciated figure sat beside him. General Walter Pires de Carvalho was here for a different reason. While Balaclava's career was ending, he was ascending. He had been given the promotion to fill the gap left by Balaclava's retirement, and the departing general had made his displeasure clear. He had been a staunch legalist, a stalwart enemy of communism, and above all, an admirer of Lot's efforts to keep the army disciplined. De Carvalho, in his eyes, had never shaken off the treachery that clung to him like a tick. He still recalled De Carvalho's lack of support for Lot in '55, and never forgiven him, nor any of the generals who stood aside that year. If his contempt was reciprocated, De Carvalho did not show it. Balaclava's sneer crept up on his face the moment he laid his eyes on his replacement. His eyes stared straight ahead into the crowd, denying Balaclava a mirror that might justify his hatred. He sat down and let the rest of the proceedings wash over him. Time and a lack of De Carvalho in his vision softened Balaclava's sour mood. He had at least done his job. He had defended the Republic and could now enjoy his retirement. He trusted the other generals around him weren't as treasonous. Honesty and integrity in Brazil were both dead. This was the only conclusion that Lacerda could possibly arrive at as he packed his remaining belongings into a suitcase. The government had fallen to the charms of outlying Cred and Adhemar, the stake who had come back from the dead to ruin a chance of honesty and decency in Brazilian governance in favor of the shambolic, phony replacement he and his friends had cooked up. As soon as he heard that the impeachment vote had failed, Lacerda had immediately called his secretary in order to clean out his office, as well as to inform anyone who worked under him that they would all soon be out of a job. The crushing feeling of his defeat was too much to handle. He, the BTB, and the PSD, and every other force that had fought the battle for Brazil's soul had lost the fight. And here he was, running away with his tail between his legs. Slamming his suitcase shut, he contemplated just where everything got wrong. Perhaps he should have fought harder in '65. Perhaps he should have conceded to another candidate sooner so that the vote would have been less split. Or, some spiteful voice in his head said, maybe he should have simply walked into Adhemar's hospital room and strangled the man as he slept. It wasn't if he had mattered anymore anyway. His flight was booked, a place to stay had been arranged, and he would start a new life in the United States, a country that still remained clean of Adhemar's brand of seedy, populistic nonsense. He had already received offers from a man by the name of William Buckley to come onto his radio show so that he may warn Americans to avoid Brazil's mistakes. Such a career would be fulfilling and worthwhile, of course, but deep down Lacerda would always remember one thing. Adhemar had beaten him. That was a construction going on the nuclear sites. Done in June of '69. Look at that. And while better military professionalism. Heck yeah. Free France recognized by Iberia. Interesting. Adhemar de Barros was alive and well in Brazil as he was luckily sworn in after his dark horse victory at the ballot in a subsequent coma after he had collapsed at the Basilica of Our Lady Aparecida from a heart attack. As both celebrations and jeers died down from his inauguration, Adhemar stated that he had simply taken the time that God had given to him in the coma and looked back at his actions and played a quick card game with death himself, a game that he boasts to have won. Now, with Adhemar firmly at the helm, he promises to lead Brazil into a brighter future, ostensibly one taking corruption to a newer heights. For Adhemar may steal, but he delivers. Adhemar limped into the cabinet meeting room, seeing it was still empty. His gaze was hazy, yet he knew that each piece of furniture remained exactly where he last saw it. Tempted to pretend nothing had changed, he heaved and took a seat, his heart hampering with hypertension. After 3 months of dormancy, his muscles now demanded he sleep 12 hours a night. For 2 hours a day, he was forced to go on inane walks around Kubitschek's Martinist playground. Gone was Sao Paulo's hero of the masses. In its place was a saboteur, no longer fit for politics anymore, and he would pass out. There would be no second term, no remaking of the Constitution. His party was in tatters, and the enemies would destroy everything he had built. He woke from his slumber. The dream was over, yet the nightmare never ended. All this talk of foreign spies and political subterfuge. Were the Germans really infiltrating his staff, playing them for fools? Perhaps the rumors were true that OFM agents were aiding the opposition. His blood pressure could no longer take this Cold War nonsense. However, before he could spare a moment for that, Adhemar needed to get to the bottom of his impeachment affair. Someone was behind all of this, and every whisper, every rumor, pointed in one direction. Tancredo, surely. But did Edna not support him? Perhaps I misjudged her. Let's go to cohabitation. Politics makes strange bedfellows. One of the few failures at 65 was our inability to get our great ally Lotto's elected as VP. In his place came the daughter of the man who stole the presidency from us in 1960. It's no secret that Lotto resented having to work with us, and our conflicting methods in governance have acted as a permanent thorn in relations between Adhemar and Edna. Then, when our administration was at its lowest moment, and our enemies attempted to impeach Adhemar, it came as a massive shock when Lot refused to aid them in their coup attempt. Perhaps, then, the best way to solve this mystery is to go and ask her directly. Well, this is the question of them all. Why? ¿Por qué? I don't know if Spanish is the same in Spanish Y. It's the same as Portuguese Y. Takagi, huh? I thought he was already, I don't know, I haven't played this deep into TNO in a while, so I'm not sure what's gonna happen, really. Adhemar's in a private meeting room on Planalto's 3rd floor. Once a reminder of his power, the Brave Brazilians outside now suffocating him in responsibility. His condition had hardly improved since he woke, still shaking. He refused to sit. He was a stalwart sentinel who would never falter. He had to reach his fall by counting for every variable, and Edna was a puzzle he couldn't ignore. White gloves knocked on the attic door. "Come in." Edna's entrance was like a ripple in the room's still waters. Her scarlet suit jacket, paired with a patterned ivory skirt, painted a picture of strength. She could easily have been Brazil's first female president. Why didn't she take the chance? "Things were hell when you were out, Mr. President. Have you been feeling well enough?" Something was off, but he donned his iconic grin. "I'm good. I've been meaning to ask a few questions." His blood curdled. Particularly about... what was happening? Nevis. Suddenly he felt lightheaded. His heart rate dropped. Years of medicine flooded back to him. This was a vasovagal syncope. Sprinting, she catches up with him as she lurched forward. "Are you all right?" Looking up, it all clicked to him. There was no pity in her eyes. There had only ever been duty. He nods, unusually silent. Something in her tone told him that what she was about to say was the absolute immutable truth. "Adhemar, it's okay. I'm here." His fate was literally in her hands, but he knew somehow she was on his side. Chuckling, he gets up. Near sycophantal episodes aren't always critical. Just a bit of dizziness. A thought brings him back to reality. He had to bring out a special little bottle. It was the easiest way to keep powerful people close. His health be damned. They had a lot of catching up to do. "Care for a glass of Jabuticaba?" Well, it's time to kick out the Germans, it seems. So, Adhemar will purge a large amount of German influence in the country. This will harm our economic growth. Adhemar's a good-natured, honest man who tries to see the best in people, even if they give him reasons to mistrust him. When Hermann Josef Abs offered to restart the German-Brazilian relations and kickstart trade, Adhemar took him up on his lucrative deal in spite of the former's dubious nature. He should have trusted his gut. Along with his secretary, Abs conspired to transform Brazil into another Reich Commissariat. To repay them for their betrayal, we shall make sure to expel all traces of German influence in Brazil. We will not only ban all trade connections with the PAC and nationalize German trade assets, but also break off German diplomatic ties with them and extradite German diplomats and spies from Brazil, while we seek to get rid of everything German. We are not genocidal monsters like them. In that regard, German and Brazilians are free to stay as long as they have a long history here and are law-abiding citizens. Abs thought he could make a fool of us. Let us show him how wrong he was. It doesn't make sense that we're doing this after the CIA admitted to trying to kill us. It really doesn't. But it's the only one we can do. That's the only thing I'm gonna go back and edit. There goes the Black League. Well, that reminds me, we have, these guys over here. Doing whatever the fuck. So we have ultimate loyalty, but the nepotism is crushing. Holy shit. Do some more development. Let's expand some more logging. Pablo drove back to the depot after setting off his last passenger for night at Sao Paulo International Airport. A German visitor who had nothing but complaints. The man could never shut up the whole ride. However, shift over, Pablo could finally switch from bossa nova everyone kept telling him to play to his beloved classic samba. As he looked for the right station, an official-sounding voice crackled through one of the frequencies. This bill proposed a complete severance of ties with Germany. His taxi screeched to a halt at a red light. Next, however, he saw a woman also glued to the radio. This action arises from recent revelation of discrepancies of our governmental structures. Both were authorized in unison, so that's what they're calling it. All diplomatic relations between our nation and the Reich would be suspended. Light went green. Trade between Brazil and the Reich would be put on hold. A Volkswagen Beetle broomed by, then turned a corner, vanishing from view. Brazil will cease issuing visas to the Reich nationals until further notice. Chamberlain needed time to be passed. He would love to have stranded that German here. Still, what's strangely good news. His father died fighting those bastards, and now he no longer had a role in his grave. Unusually, they announced it at this hour, but negotiations must have been tough. Actually, that tourist was probably so grumpy due to jet lag. It was 2 a.m. in Germania. Those Germans were going to have a rough awakening. Perhaps that prick timed this perfectly just to screw with them. Very clever. Maybe the coma finally kickstarted that dimwit's brain. Now let's bribe, blackmail, and browbeat. Brazil's an independent power. Adhemar assumed that fact to be known by all superpowers who do business with us, but it seems that great powers have a tendency to overstep their bounds. Well, no more. This so-called superpower has caused great suffering to our nation and helped launch Brazil into the crisis that has rocked us for the past few months. At last, we will make them pay for crossing us. Unfortunately, the voting process is taking longer than expected. To speed up the process, we shall use certain donations to encourage our colleagues to see the validity of our bills. Adhemar just wants this chapter of the presidency closed so he can move back to normal politics. The 1970 election is closing, and Adhemar's succession must be decided. Yeah, we're funding more and more of our money over here. I believe the maximum is going to be how much is it supposed to be? How's the dam going along? The dam's doing good. Well, we're almost done with our nuclear testing range. Bridge is going to get there in a couple months. I think I might fund it in a couple months. So I'm looking for the event disaster. Well, I don't like what the disaster implies there. They cut our salary last week. Again. What's next? Cut lunch breaks too? Blurted out of workers. Dissent barely audible amidst the impetuous noises of hammers and jackhammers echoing on the Campinas terminal sites. Deal with it, Antonio, spoke Alfredo Tavares, the ordinary-looking manager of the Rio Sao Paulo rail. Budget cuts happen all the time. We're lucky we managed to get here on time. But what about us? Snapped another worker, shining with sweat. I mean, at least in the past we would receive some cigarettes, but these guys, he pointed to some of the distant group of Asian men boasting impeccable black suits. You know, the ones with weird logos. They just pass by you like you're nothing. They're assholes, that's what they are, shouted a worker, punching his rusty shovel in the air. Every day they keep asking for something more from us, as if that's going to solve the lack of material. Enough! Until Alfredo snarled, drawing the attention of the workers milling around him. Look, I know things didn't go as planned, but we are just halfway through, so keep your heads down, and we'll be at the Copacabana in no time. Only then. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Shit. Clenching his fists as an unwanted presence loomed at his side, it was Giovanni Battista, the honorable Brazilian representative of Hitachi and their loyal security, or enforcer for those subjected to him. In case you haven't been paying attention, lunchtime was shortened, and we have passed it millennia ago. This rail won't build itself, will it? The man's eloquent words always inspired both fear and enmity in the workers. They were all armed with enough working tools that could easily kill a man. Yet they stood motionless, only for the boss's face to disfigure in pure anger. What are you looking at? Go back to work, you Pariba vagabonds. Well, that's interesting. I would have figured with a French state, they would have done more democratic stuff. Maybe not, though. Well, shit, look at that. Resistance is kicking ass right now. Well done. Well, Quadros was right, I guess. Quadros is a fucking idiot. A fool who prattles on about corruption while lining his own pockets. Even Adhemar cannot build enough hospitals to deal with his mental issues. Yet even a broken clock is right twice a day. Brazil is destined to be a superpower, and a superpower does not dance to the whims of the nations. It is a truly independent power. Quadros with us right to seek out an independent foreign policy, and Adhemar make this idea a reality. Well, with Germany out of the picture, we need to reorient our diplomacy to encourage both spear and elephant investments here. This will lead to them fighting each other for influence with an increased number of investments, which will be only beneficial to us. With this tactic, Brazil will be truly able to become an independent power. Yeah, okay. And they're fucking raffle stomping them. God damn. Uh-oh. The Pact is having some issues right now, aren't they? There we go. Vive la France. Some general building construction done. France reclaimed. There's old Charles de Gaulle. Oh, better healthcare quality. Look at that. That's nice. That is very nice. World-class healthcare. That's huge. And better industrial equipment. It's all really coming at the end, so it's a little late, but... Farmers can now expect their claims to be accepted within a reasonable period. According to new reforms by the federal government, the bill seems to help farmers in the Midwest. It wasn't common for Jose to read the newspaper, especially while he was selling his produce at the market. However, this day the headline interested him. "Mario, did you know the newspaper's lying?" He laughed at the other farmer approach. "Let me see it," said Mario, wondering what made Jose read the news for once. Skimming through the text, he found it. The line that provoked such an outburst from his friend. "Reasonable period?" This is a joke, right? It's been 4 weeks and my claim hasn't even been considered. Mine hasn't even been touched for 5, but of course Antonio gets his one accepted. Connections with the people in charge gets you somewhere. All the while, we have to fight for the slightest bit of land. They know that the men in Brasilia didn't care for them. All they care about is money. A life defined by futile struggle. Well, let's get the Red Devils in. Adhemar's time in Tacoma was perhaps the PSP in modern Brazil's darkest hour. It was full of many necessary compromises and conflicts, all needed to keep Brazil safe and prosperous. Yet some actions taken during the crisis go beyond what is politically necessary and creep into foolishness. A lot of this agreement to legalize one such action, and a move too far for Adhemar to personally solve this. Adhemar finally called Carla Presta to somehow find a solution that won't blow up in our face. We can get past without being called a traitor. Adhemar may be able to sleep peacefully. We could do improved military infrastructure. Interesting. Let's do it. And while we have Burgundy just doing its own thing here. Look at that happy man right there. That is a man who just escaped death. Let's do another development edict. Let's go expand some more logging. Adhemar tapped on the smooth surface of a telephone. Commies propelled him to Sao Paulo's governorship, but after the ban, he was the first to purge him entirely. Now here he was begging them for aid. Gripping his cane only made it with trembling words. "Sorry, my husband's busy," said Murray's sheet. He returned. "Would you like to leave a message?" The president had wanted to butter the bread before slicing it, but he was left no choice but to say his proposal and let Prestes ponder it. "It's okay. He's usually polished every detail. Write this down. Write this down. Luis, you helped Lado when I was close to death. You deserve repayment. Relegalization is sadly not possible, but there's another way. Those who distrust you must know there's no catch, so the ask comes first. Your party sides with mine, that's all I need." Surely it wasn't trivial to support a party in tatters, but it was also his only demand. "In exchange, your people may run in our name for the legislature. Just your normal Bucarinist friends, not those Amazonist idiots." That was it. The full deal. Bribes were useless on him. Further negotiation was not an option. He had nothing else to give. However, how else could the PCB get an opportunity like this? There will be no better offer. Not from him, not from anyone else. He found himself wondering why he put so much effort into his choice of words. His wife likely recorded merely the basic details. Perhaps she simply hoped to see the coma had robbed him of his bargaining skills, one of the few things he had left. Suddenly, a different voice cracked over the line, and Adhemar could do nothing but sigh. Someone was listening the whole time. He always knew how to make impossible offers tempting. And now let's prepare for 1970. At last, with the immediate problems dealt with, we can begin preparations for the next election. His first convention without Adhemar as the presidential candidate was sure to be a momentous occasion. Will this be the first convention where not Adhemar will play his first violin? He's sure to be a key participant, making sure the party does not choose poorly. We have proven to the people that we party of effective governments. We must now show we do not rely on the charisma of one man, that we are the only party that can take Brazil through the coming years of turmoil. It is a long road to the election, yet we cannot be idle. We must win a clear majority over the opposition to prove that we are the true voice of the Brazilian people. It was cold and quiet in the concrete chamber, several hundred meters beneath the Cachimbo Mountains. Alvaro Alberto de Monte Silva realized Brazil, the country in which he'd spent his waking life, the country in which he'd grown up, studied, taught, and served, had always remained on the surface. Here he might as well have been on a different planet, a dry one. Another 50 meters below where he stood, a large system of hoses and hatches lay dormant after weeks of pumping out any water present. Moisture weakened the stone, and they wanted to avoid a subsidence crater if possible. He promised no radiation would escape, but the chamber went much deeper. Down there it was pitch black. Where he was, the illumination of the HID lamps flooded from the narrow and winding entranceway. Standing on the edge of his carpet of light, he peered over the railings, straining to see the tiny compartment where the bomb would lie beside cameras and test equipment, cradled like his dearest little baby under its crib, mobile in a dark, cozy room. Then in milliseconds, everything would be heat. The surrounding earth would not melt, it would vaporize. From their monitoring station, there would be some vibration, but within the inferno, he saw it all. A current of thunder and superheated radiance dictating judgments, thousands of souls. In an eternal instant, when the weight of their deeds and the warmth of their years would be measured and tallied. For the briefest, strangest moment, he envied them. Who but St. Peter himself would finally give them clarity? Unbelievable what you've all built, huh? Lotto Natel slapped Silva on the back. Silva coughed as he regained his balance. Behind Lotto, the research team toured a few gawking government agents. Lotto patted him on the shoulder. You're doing great work. Silva could only nod back. So that's a nuclear test site. Done. With 93% of the vote, Getulio Vargas Jr. The PSP was ecstatic at Adhemar's announcement. The man who was popular, who didn't spend much time for him. The same can be said for tens of millions of reals and bribes this other fool needed. And 91% for Vice President Lotto Natel. A polite applause. He'd better win this time, he thinks. He surveyed the many familiar faces still here in the very same Matterhorn adorned Sao Paulo hall he'd rallied in plenty of times. His city, his home, just as he remembered it. Vargas approached the mic, and he let him through as he trembled his way off the podium. Yet, gradually, the cavalcade of cheers grew more and more intense, slowly becoming deafening. He glanced at the audience. They weren't looking at the candidates, but at him, their hero. Even Lotto and Vargas joined in. The all-encompassing avalanche of admiration echoed in the acoustics all of the auditorium, bouncing off a high ceiling and the walls over and over and over. With an excuse of a smile, he left as fast as his legs would allow him. Over the warmth of the spotlight, a coldness came over him, one he couldn't shake even hours later in his coffin of a vehicle, stuck on the overnight to Brasilia. Just him, his wife, and his thoughts. Are you okay, Adhemar? The hallway's lights were dim, but they illuminated lines of worry on her face. She held his arm like a nurse stopping him from falling over. Something was happening. Like that funeral before the coma, but very different. Under the repeating streetlights, Leonore just could barely catch something she hadn't seen in over 30 years. Back when he was a mere soldier fighting on the grounds they were driving on, long before he decided nothing could ever defeat him. Faint memories reflected down his cheeks. In the rearview mirror, Sao Paulo grew dusted before it disappeared beyond the hills. So what do we want to do? Okay. Comman's Paradise isn't great. So, this is what we can decide to do. So, this side is going to focus more on making sure we have money. Meanwhile, this side is focusing more on our legacy. Interesting. So, legacy versus cash. Also Ozymandias. It wasn't just a scrape, but a date with death. Adhemar's lucky to be alive. One incompetent hospital worker in his life's work. No, his legacy would have been stolen from him. We cannot control his health, but we can control his readiness and make sure that he leaves the executive function ready for someone to finish what he started. The president has done so much for this country, even if his people did not recognize the burden he took for them. He deserves to be remembered for his service, his effectiveness, his cunning, and his power. He deserves to be remembered as a president greater than Lot, Kubitschek, or Vargas. No, more than that. He'll be remembered as the greatest president of all time. The GOAT. The GOAT. So we have, I'm guessing, 13 months left of content. Probably. Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. Look at that. The Organization of Free Nations. No Sierra Leone, though. Liberia joins now, though. That's interesting. I didn't realize that was possible. Anyway. Even the desk was not the same. Adhemar kept changing his posture in his seat and adjusting himself, comparing it all to how as it was before the hospital. Even still, the cushioning, the dust on the table, the view from a window, it all felt just unfamiliar enough to piss him off. And that damn window, there was a new building in his view. He could swear it. But even just pushing off the floor to take a look, his knees buckled. His spine trembled and he crashed down. The calendar did not soften his predicament either. The president knew he could not be in this building forever. Apparently, they would throw him out anyway, even for being sick. There was no time to hold out for something nice. He was going to have to use all he had now before he could no longer do so. At any rate, they were going to remember him somehow, and as such, they had better do it on his terms. He always thought of making a charity. That he was known as a man who steals would eventually frame him poorly, and be seen giving back would surely change that. Even after being so rudely interrupted from his presidential term, he could not help but appreciate the healthcare system and the fact that it saved its life. It would build on his own healthcare policy in the way the state could not, and that was what people would think too. Yes, he had to leave office, and yes, just like anyone, he was mortal. Right now, though, he had the unique power to define how the world would not think of and remember him. Like any good businessman knew, this was not something to leave to waste. Rehabilitating the debilitated. So we have a new foreign minister guy. Luis Gonzalez Novelli Jr. Just like Adhemar. Luis hailed from Sao Paulo. Just like Adhemar, he graduated in Rio as a doctor. Just like Adhemar, he fought with Ballistas in 32, and under Adhemar, he served as vice governor of Sao Paulo. After marrying the stepdaughter of certain Eurico Gaspar Dutra, the old marshal instilled with him the need for law and order and good relations with Germany. Together from Tamiro, Novelli led a staunchly pro-German faction of the PSP. Now that the Inamarchy needs someone with a few German contacts, there was no one else in the PSP more obvious choice for Novelli. Okay, so I think I know what was supposed to happen. Since they tried to coup us, we were supposed to leave the OFN and then do the new special relationship. But since we didn't get that part of the focus tree. Ooh, that's a little unfortunate. Okay. Let's do no bridge too far. Brushing against improbable demise is not waking Adhemar's instinct to build a legacy. Everyone will take him for a fool. Although not a cheap or even effective method, monuments can be an effective propaganda tool. From the Egyptian pyramids of Statue of Liberty in New York, people love spectacles, and Adhemar will prove that with just that. Practically be damned, for he is not much longer to make his work clear. Brasilia will work as quickly as conceivable to pump out aggressively promoted mega projects, some of which sorely needed public works and others less than mandatory. Either way, everyone will witness the results and be dazzled for a moment. The progressistas in the army, renowned as a decent lot, will surely be aid in these ambitions. No one can be upset about highways being built, so why would there be any protests? I'm here for it. I was just thinking if we're going to get much time to do the rest of these focuses. Ooh. Something's happening. Other than the autosave. Oh, shit. Speculations in intelligent diplomatic communities after reports of nuclear detonation in the testing site of Marmbico Island in the Argentine Antarctica have come to conclusion as the president of a Planetian country, Juan Domingo Perón, seriously announced that the Argentine Republic has become a nuclear power. The sun of May stands proud under the light of the sky. Those poor penguins. My god. Oh, shit. The Rio Niterói Bridge was halfway done, about 13 kilometers to Marvel's glistering ocean. Countless columns stood at attention, guarding the marvelous city's workers did precision work with cranes and scaffolding. While the span had yet to be finished, it already carried the dreams of a Rio undaunted by the physical limitation of nature. And then column fell. Standing in the center of a pristine, shining bay, the sound held the entirety of Guanabara expanse as a captive audience as it roared over the waters, blew through the urban corridors, and reverberated against the mountains. Those by the beaches, the coastal speedways, the hillsides of their penthouses would have witnessed the tragedy. A pillar of reinforced concrete. I'm gonna go ahead and fund it right now. Transforming to ash and dust before disappearing into the water. The rest, peeking past street corners out windows, would have seen only shadows of a sea. The sun had already set when they counted 20 missing, and the sun had already risen when they announced 20 dead. There was an investigation, but it was run by lawyers and morticians, not by engineers or detectives. The culprit was already obvious: structural failure due to a substandard materials and insufficient reinforcement, a consequence of corruption-induced cost-cutting. Even Francisca from her Gamboa abode could surmise that the government was spending more on buying people's silence or calling investors rather than finding those responsible and ensuring this didn't happen again. At least Vosh money could help the families of the victims, she thought. But God bless those widows. Yeah. I shut, mind blank. Is this how it was going to be every day until he would be whisked back to the hospital again? Even the damn aides were getting the cold shoulder. Maybe it was in his head. Maybe he just needed... Mr. President, welcome back. Emilio Garastazzi Medici sauntered in his baritone voice firm. He stood before the desk, hesitated, then resignedly extended his hand. While his host could not stand, he could still smile and shake hands. I received your briefing earlier about the mega projects. I've always respected your boldness, Mr. President, but I am sure I do not remind you that the Army's first priority is defending Brazil from outside threats, now from down south and from an offended superpower. The bastard had plenty of boldness himself, Adhemar mused. Yes, he may be frail, but that did not make him petty. He was going to get what he wanted, just as always. If I did not understand that, I would not be doing my job properly, General. But I would say that the contribution I'm asking of you and your men would be very medal-worthy indeed, alongside anything else you might think of. The price is yours to name, my friend. As ever, when making a deal, Medici stared back as if he hadn't heard anything the first time, before finally cracking into a wan smile. Very well, I suppose there are a couple of engineers I would feel comfortable re-signing. I will, as you say, find that price in due course. Adhemar grinned to himself. He couldn't stand up to the man himself, but he could at least make them all dance as he told them to. Good to see that at least the military hadn't changed. The old man could still use his string. And there we go. Is that a campaign trail reference? New campaign trail? Let's fulfill the promise to the Nikkei. repeal of the Japanese immigration ban. Among those empty words, Adhemar promised his Japanese partners he should at least show a modicum of honor by providing a token gesture to symbolize this newfound friendship at a local level. The Japanese immigration rate stagnating for a long while, and its origin born from a racist theology. There is no reason for the long-standing immigration ban to continue. Solely on account of moral decency, Adhemar would be willing to phase out the exclusionary policy without outside urging. But popular demand turns out to align with the president's forced right. A good business backer, Brazil's a respectable friend of Adhemar. The Nikkei will be able to reunite with their families as a reward for long-standing loyalty to the establishment. Let the Nikkei lobbyists know, before all else, that Adhemar is a true Tomodachi. Pass constitutional change for the Senate requires support of at least 45 senators. Interesting. Well, let's rally the PSP. Let's rally the PSD. That did nothing. Bribes. There we go. We maxed out PSD support. Or PSP support, rather. Heart aching and bearing, Adhemar managed to muster his strength of readying himself in the spotlight of elaborate film sets upon the Congressional Palace. Never felt so odious and terrible since his days when running Sao Paulo. Yet has a moment to make his final change. How much time does he have left after all? Days or perhaps months. Beyond that, the pearly gates await, and they never discriminate. Press teams ran themselves into the palace as soon as Adhemar's bodyguards permitted. A suspenseful moment of pause. Adhemar read from his notes. Brazil's a nation of justice and equality. She never asked for the people to provide for her, and instead provided so much for natural bounties unconditionally, be it for the wealthiest or the most downtrodden. Continuing after a momentary break, he turned his gaze towards the cameras. It is not an affront to God's intent for us to work against the good people from Japan, who are, by every measure, as human as us. Decades ago in the Rio Congress, I have fought for the Nikkei's right of reunion. Many of my colleagues thought differently. It is true that the PSP, the party of the brave and the righteous, had always been a force of progress. Therefore I, Adhemar de Barros, now plead for the popular support of the moral majority repeal of the policy of immigration ban on our Japanese friends. A brief and uneasy quiet ensued. The floorboard creaked, the cameras chirped. He murmured before the conclusion of his speech in the midst of an ambivalent crowd. The bottom line is always money. But hey, we'll get there soon enough, won't we? I'm going to go ahead and leave things there. Of course, the PRP ain't supporting this. Even half of the UDN is... Did I read this yet? But, yeah, I don't think I did. For years, the Japanese Brazilians have been persecuted by elements in government for their seeming inability to assimilate into local cultures. Their language and culture banned, and their rights taken away. Realization by the PSD given the final blow to their weakened right of the Japanese Brazilians with the immigration ban of 1946. Or so they thought. And if you thought this part was going to go on for much longer, so you thought, because I got to leave things there. Thanks for watching, though, gang. Like if you liked, dislike if you didn't. Leaving comments, feedback down in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get. I appreciate any of you going to have for me. Hit the sub button, hit the notification bell, do all that fun stuff. I'll be here next time. Thanks as always for watching, my friends. And bye-bye.